Hello guys, welcome back to the channel. First things first, look at the state of this thing. It has got the white Onza porcupines on there, and for any of you are wondering why, this was my dream as a child. Good old Action Man, so what can you do? What's the plan in today's video, I hear you ask? Well, a number of you, and I mean a number of you, have messaged me to say, Deeks, can you go through how to jump? So you've guessed it, today is all about jumping. We've obviously come to our local riding spot, literally 5 minutes away from where my house is, so we're nice and safe, and I've got my mum filming little bits and bobs today, so you know, if you see a shaky camera later, you can blame it on her. Start things off, we've come to this small tabletop and we're going to work our way through it and explain what we need to do to get over it. As you may see, there is a number of ways of getting over a jump, and today we're going to look at a few of them. Biggest misconception for a number of riders is, how do you get air? A lot of them will say, yeah, I'll just go as fast as possible, which is all well and good, or they pull. Very much the same as the manual. If you remember, we talked all about push rather than pull. So there's a number of different ways to get over a jump. We've obviously got a roll technique, so this is where the jump isn't too big, we just want to roll over the top of it. Got the push technique. This is basically the safest way to get over a jump, so this is where we're just purely going to push the bike in between me and the ground to be nice and safe. Then we've got the pop technique. So this is a skill where if we've got a jump that's slightly bigger or there's a double, we might want to think about popping to get more height on the jump. Last one is very much a racing technique, case of coming in as fast as possible, and yes, you sort of see Aaron Gwynn etc do a proper scrub. All we're thinking of doing is just eliminating the bike going up. You could call it a scrub, or you could just call it a racer's push, whatever you want to call it, but we're going to look at that today. Found a nice little tabletop. Hopefully you guys can find similar. The reason why we've come here, we can literally start off by rolling it and gradually progressing. Start off with, I hear you all going, well, how do I actually get air, Ben? There's three things that we need to remember when we come into a jump, and that is speed. So obviously how fast we come in will dictate how fast and how long you go in the air. Pressure, so this is basically the pump at the bottom of the jump. And then the last one is timing. So this is where, when I time where I do my pump, and also time when I unweight the bike. But this is something that we're going to look at later on. Big problem is with a number of people is they just see a jump, they go Mach 10, and as a general rule of thumb, bike parks build jumps fairly safe as far as they're nice, long and low. If we were to go Mach 10 into a really kicky jump, I guarantee a number of you will probably go flying over the bars, and we've all been there. I've been there myself. Oh yeah, love that shit. Just think more about all technique, don't worry about clearing jumps today. This is the jump we're going to use today. It's a nice safe tabletop, so basically means if we do land right in the middle of the jump itself, it's not the end of the world. First skill we're going to look at is actually just how to roll over it and what we need to think of. The biggest problem we have with a number of jumps, people either look right into the face, or if it is a double, they start looking into the hole in the middle. So as I'm coming into this jump, I want you guys to think about looking as far down that trail as possible. If we start looking down at the lip, that's why our weight's in the wrong place, and that's where we're going to go out of balance. I want you to think no pulling whatsoever with your hands, and I just want you to think about what you're doing with our feet. So in this case, we're just going to think about driving our heels into the floor and then just allowing the bike to go over with no pull whatsoever. Steady, looking ahead, relax. We have done the roll technique, which was on the tabletop. So there's the little tabletop there. You may or may not see now we've got a bomb hole. Come over to a slightly bigger jump to hopefully show you guys technique slightly better. We can't really roll something like this because there is a bomb hole. So this is where we need to think about another technique. So the first technique we're going to do is called the push technique. So this is where at the base of the jump, which you can sort of see that I've just about cleared out, I'm going to think about compressing the bike into the takeoff. Now the biggest problem we have where a number of people just purely rely on speed, if it's quite a kicky jump, you might find that you get bucks over the bars purely because we're coming in at Mach 10. It's almost like hitting a wall. We're the heavier mass, and that's where you go flying over the bars. So when we get to the base of the jump, that's why I want you guys to think about compressing the bike. The biggest thing to do when the jump gets slightly bigger is look as far down that trail as possible. You know, not that I can do it, but if you think of Red Bull Rampage, Brendan wouldn't be looking into the canyon because he's just asking for trouble. He's going to be looking to where he wants to be, and that's hopefully the other side. So as soon as we're coming into this, we want to think about our looking. So that's obviously as far down that trail as possible, and also where we're compressing the bike. So in this case, at the base of the jump, and then we're just going to think about that push. As soon as we get to the top, we've got to think about relaxing. If we go tight, that's where we're going to have problems. First technique we're going to do is the push technique. So this is where we're coming in a bit of speed, push, relax. hopefully on the push technique, guys, one thing you noticed, there wasn't any pulling whatsoever. It was just nice straight arms all the way through and just nice and relaxed. As a general rule of thumb, if you're in the air and you can move your fingers, that's telling you that you haven't snatched at the bar, very much like the manual that we looked at the other week. Cannot stress enough, use that technique to familiarise yourself with having the wheels off the ground. That is the safest possible way to get airtime, and that is basically a way of just pushing the energy out of you. You're not ever bringing energy into you, and therefore you're not going to end off sideways. If you find yourself sideways in the air, unfortunately, it's probably just down to the fact that you've just pulled at the bar. As soon as you're up in the air, just think about being as relaxed as possible. If you think about the guys who take the hands off and all that stuff, it's because they've pushed the bike into that position. From a trail perspective, race perspective, very rarely do you want to start pulling. There are times where you might want to think about pulling, and that is where there's no particular lip, but on most lips, everyone normally wants to think about the pump or the push to get over it. So the next one we're going to look at is the pop technique. Two things we can do if we start casing the jump. Obviously, we can come in slightly quicker, which is all well and good. We get more speed, hopefully we get more distance. However, there's times on the trail where if we come in straight out of a corner, we're pedaling our hardest, there might be times where we might not actually be able to do the jump. So therefore, what we want to think about doing is coming in exactly the same. I'm still going to push in the base of the jump, but this time, as soon as my front wheel starts cresting, all I'm going to think about doing is unweighting with my body. So it's the unweight, or the pop, allows me to get more height on the jump itself. Let's give it a go. Right, next one, the pop technique. So we're going to deliberately go a bit slower. Push, pop. So you can see, overshot that then. That was the pop technique. So as explained beforehand, the pop technique is all about, if we're not clearing the jump or we haven't got enough speed, we either get more distance or more height, and it's all just down to the fact that we've unweighted the bike. The biggest problem we've got with this jump, or most jumps, if they're long and low, such as most trail centres, if we unweight the bike too early, all that's going to happen is we've unweighted the bike, and the bike can veer off and do its own thing. So once again, if you found yourself sideways, it's probably just down to the fact that we've unweighted the bike too early. So it's very important that we don't think about unweighting the bike, or we don't fully unweight the bike until our front wheel is either at the very top of the lip or it's just beyond, because then we're going to get the most. If we try and unweight the bike from down here, which is quite common, where people push and then pop straight away, if we pop too early, life story, it's just going to mean that the bike is unweighted, and then it's going to veer off on its own agenda. All right, so that was the pop technique. Next one is the scrub, or the keeping it low race technique. We've looked at the roll technique, we've looked at the push technique, we've looked at the pop techniques. The final one that we're going to cover today is the race technique, or the scrub, or whatever. Now, obviously in some magazines you see people scrubbing like this. We're not going to go as extreme as that today. We're literally going to think of just keeping the bike nice and low and how we go about doing that. If you imagine, this time I'm going to come with a bit more speed, and this time we're still doing the push at the base, but as soon as that front wheel wants to start lifting, I want to try and flatten that jump off as much as I can. So what I'm going to do is actually push my front wheel with my hands. As soon as I push with my hands, it's very important that I push with my feet, because otherwise all I'm essentially doing is throwing myself over the bar. So let's give that a go, see how we get on with that, and then go from there. I'm deliberately going to go faster this time. As we're coming in, push through the arms, and away we go. Pushing at the base of the jump, but this time, this is the only time where as soon as that front wheel starts cresting, I'm going to push through with my hands. I don't know whether you saw, but what I actually did was start to push with my more dominant side. So some people actually start carving or turning up the takeoff. As soon as I start turning, I'm actually taking a few centimeters off the top of this jump. So it basically means that I'm even lower. So we can think of this for two reasons. We're either a racer and we want to get to the bottom as quickly as possible. So therefore we're basically taking as much time out of the trail as we can by keeping it nice and low. Or you might find that you want to try and generate as much speed off this first jump because you've got a super duper big jump on the second jump. So therefore we want to carry as much speed as possible. If we relied on the normal push technique, the pop technique, you know, we'd end up miles down there. So this is very much more of an advanced technique. So certainly for you beginners, don't even think about this because it might confuse you to start off with. So purely rely on the push technique over and over and over. Once you get that, then maybe think of the pop technique, and then after that, as I said before, This is quite a racery technique, a scrub technique or racer technique, whatever you want to call it. So we've looked at the lip, we've looked at the techniques we need to do on various scenarios. So whether we push, pop, scrub, roll, anything like that, when it comes to the landing, this is the most important thing, especially when we look at pop, so where we come down from a height. We start landing with our toes down, all that's going to happen is that weight's then going to transfer into our hands, and unless you're incredibly strong or quick, it'll be very hard to get out of that. So we want to try and land on our feet as best as we can. If we're starting to jump off a wall or something like that, we wouldn't land on our toes, we'd land on our heels to absorb it. So something that we're going to try right now. If I land with my toe down, all my weight's then going to be transferred into the front of the bike and therefore cause me more drama. So what I want to try my hardest to do is just land on my feet as best I can. Give it another go and hopefully you guys can sort of see what I do with my feet. The main purpose with all of this is as we're coming into this, our heels are going to give us that acceleration speed, and secondly it's going to make it a lot safer because we're not going to land on the front of the bike. Obviously if we're incredibly strong or fast we might get away with it, but just try and be safe, land on our feet, look ahead and we'll be all good. Let's give it a go. So hopefully you guys can see, even if you land slightly further on down the landing, if you drop your heels, it's just taking any impact into your body. In this woods, unfortunately, there's a number of rubbish. So using it to our advantage, we're going to do a bit of accuracy now. So we're going to take off this, land straight on this, see how we get on. So admittedly got it second time. So the can challenge, super good way to learn accuracy when you're taking off and sort of air awareness, all that good stuff. But please don't drop your litter. We'll take this to the local recycle bin. So then guys, we've looked at a tabletop jump, nice and simple. We've looked at a sort of double, obviously, you know, not a massive double because of where we are, and obviously we don't want to put the NHS under stress or anything. The last one we're looking at is a step up. So as a general rule of thumb, step ups are a lot safer because we're going up onto the landing rather than the ground dropping away from us. As you can see, this one, or this particular one, it's not massive, but it's quite a long way up. So what we want to try and do into this is we're almost having to hold that compression down all the way up. So as soon as we're meeting the flat to the up, we're holding that compression, and then as soon as we get to the top, that's where we're going to pop or scrub depending on what technique we want to do. When we do get up to the top, as you can see, it's quite blind, so we want to look as far down that trail as possible. Now you can sort of see here there's not actually a landing, which makes it super good for learning tricks and doing tricks. Obviously that's what I'm going to do next. We've looked at a tabletop, we've looked at a double, we've looked at a step up. The next and final one we're going to look at is a step down. So this is obviously where the ground just disappears from you. As you can sort of see from this one, as you're coming in, it's very blind. You just see where the bike is. Just beyond that's where my landing. The key thing that we want to do with one of these, as soon as we're coming into this, we want to almost look as far down that trail as possible. So even if it's blind, we want to try and pick a spot on the horizon, certainly if we know this track. So we want to try and pick a tree or something like that. Obviously it all depends on experience. If there was a hole here, you know, you've got to build your way to it. The beauty we've got with this particular one, you can literally plop off and then get bigger and bigger until you get to the landing. Let's give it a go. Right, let's give the step down and quick go then. Come in with a bit of speed. And there we go. That was a small insight into how to jump. So we've obviously looked and covered rolling a jump, pushing a jump, popping a jump, scrubbing a jump. We've also looked at step ups, step downs and smallish doubles, I guess. So hopefully you guys have enjoyed this video. If you have, it'd be great if you give it a thumbs up. Be sick if you subscribe. Hopefully it helps a little, and until the next one, I'll see you in a bit. Oi, oi.